Hey, welcome back to the videos. We've been doing kind of a mini series of videos looking at dissecting a Scruggs solo, and in the first video we just looked at just the bare bones melody without any embellishments, and then in the second video we added some forward rolls and slides, a couple of hammer-ons. Now in this video I want to use standard Scruggs licks, and if you're not familiar with those, you can check around online, look in the Scruggs book or various DVDs. You really should learn to be a really good, competent Scruggs player. You should learn this standard vocabulary. I call it a Scruggs style, and I've actually posted some videos showing some of those elemental licks that you need to know. And what I'm going to do in this video is try to take some of those standardized vocabulary of Scruggs licks and mix them into our solos. Now there's two ways to look at this. We can chop away big sections of the melody, or maybe even all the melody, and play licks for G, C, and D, the three chord changes in the song for the key of G, and just blow the melody completely out of the water and just substitute licks. And that would be okay for a second or maybe third solo. But what I try to do, especially if I'm kicking the song off or I'm introducing the song to the audience or to the listeners, I want to make sure that I play a really strong melody-oriented solo. So it gets to be more of an art to take standard Scruggs licks and mix them into your solos without chopping away too much of the melody. So it's really a taste issue and deciding how much of the melody you want to keep intact. So let's start with the first section of the solo. I'm going to keep some of the forward roll ideas from the first video. Here's the G section. And what we did in the second video was use this alternating thumb idea before we went into C. What I want to do now in this video is actually eliminate this little lick, the alternating thumb, in place of a standard Scruggs lick. And this is one that every good Scruggs player should know and have in their vocabulary. Very common lick. So let's see what happens when I keep this first section of the melody intact and then substitute this lick. Sounds pretty good, and it has a shadowing of the previous lick because it does have a slide from 2 to 3, just like the previous lick we used in video 2. But this gives you more of a traditional Scruggs sound because this is a lick that you can use in tons of songs. We're just using it in the context of 9-pound hammer because it fits our need as a standard Scruggs lick. Okay, now we're going into C. Remember in C we used a hammer on the 4th string to emphasize melody, and then we kind of roll the melody out. What I want to do now is keep that hammer on because this hammer on is actually part of a really common C position lick. That's a really common Scruggs lick for a C position. It allows us to play that melody note in the right place at the right time in the measure, but then go on to play something that sounds, you know, Scruggsy. So let me incorporate that into our solo. So the only issue would be physically would be the timing part, getting the licks to blend correctly. So let me play that again. And again, just work on your phrasing. Pick a strategic spot in that roll pattern where you can stop and go into the new roll section. So we're up to G here, which is 2 beats, 1 and 2 and then a D after that, 1 and 2 and then a full measure of G, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we need to do now is figure out how we can play over the 2 beats of G, find something to play over the 2 beats of D, and then a full measure of G. What I'm going to do is a common technique, which is to play one standard lick over all those chord changes. The 2 beats of G coming up and the 2 beats of D, 2 and 2 make one measure, right? 2 beats and 2 beats. So what we're going to do is we're going to play half a measure of G, half a measure of D, but I'm just going to play one standardized lick, which I call the old Joe Clark lick. because it will last a measure if I play it correctly, and it will cover G and D. The rest of the band's going to play the G and D chords just like they would, normally, 2 beats of each. But this lick will be superimposed over both of those chord changes. So you get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You get to use 1 G lick, and it actually becomes a G and a D lick. So let me insert that in the solo. Okay, that gets me up to the last measure of G, which is 4 beats. What I'm going to do is play a couple of standard licks. Here's the first lick I'm going to play, and again, this is the last measure of your first part of your break. Okay, so that's a standard Scruggs lick, but it doesn't quite last long enough to play up to the next part of the song, so I need to tag it with something else. Let's see what I can come up with. Again, that's another standard Scruggs idea. And those 2 licks together will last a measure. So let me see what I have for the first half of the solo. Okay, well, I didn't have time to actually do the because I ran out of time. So I'll kick that out of the way. We don't need that. Now, think about it. The second half of your solo, the melody goes up as far as in the octave range. It goes to the 2nd string, remember from the previous video. What I'm going to do now is keep that melody note intact. And instead of going, well, buddy, instead of doing something simple like a push-off on the 3rd string, buddy, which emphasizes that blues note, buddy, nicely. I'm going to use it in a slightly different arrangement. I'm going to use it in a standard Scruggs format. So I need to figure out a roll pattern. Well, roll on, buddy. So we'll see what we can come up with. Here's the first half leading into the second half of your solo. Okay, so I just went right into a standard roll pattern. Into that standard Scruggs lick. Now we're going to C again, but this time, instead of just going right for the 4th string, which is the melody note, I'm going to use another C lick. And I'm not going to worry about where the melody note falls because I'm just going to be improvising over C. So here's another standard C lick that we can play in Scruggs style that will last the same amount of time as the whole measure of C. Now we're going back to the last G, to the last D, and I'll use this lick over the D chord, which is actually a G lick played over the D section of the song. Sounds kind of weird, but it actually works. So what I've done in the first half of my solo is concentrate more on still keeping the melody intact and substituting a few licks here or there to emphasize some variety. And then the second half I go a little more out there and ditch most of the melody in favor of licks. So I'm kind of building my solo up. So here will be our version. I appreciate you watching, and just try some licks. If you don't like the licks I'm using here, use some other Scruggs style licks that you know for the G, C, and D, and see what you can come up with. Appreciate you watching. See ya.